you. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Portland Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Tuesday, October 10th, 2023. Roll call.
Corbin.
Here.
Alana.
Here.
Bonnie.
Present.
Casey.
Here.
David is absent. Chris. Is absent. Adrian. Aaron.
Here.
Sabrina. I think that's Sabrina's
we see you.
Image there. Allie.
Here.
Suen, I saw also. Jonathan.
Here.
Matt.
Here.
Patty is absent, and Jessica Green is joining us later.
Thank you so much. Let's go ahead and start with public comments. I believe you have one person.
Sure.
Come on up.
Sure.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Thank you for coming, and you do have 2 minutes. So go ahead and start when you're ready.
Okay, my name is Matt Schick. I'm not going to go over the whole history again. Again, what I'm sort of asking for here is that the Parks Department implement just a basic policy that says film industry drones will not be permitted if they have any intent to fly over residential properties and film. That seems non-controversial to me. I don't think the Parks Department has any business permitting that. I can't imagine they want any part of, like, why would you even touch that? Anyway, I think it's sort of an unfortunate, unforeseen consequence of the intergovernmental agreement they had with the Portland Prosper, the Portland Film Office. I think it's unforeseen that film industries would use drones to then, take off in parks, fly into residential areas, and film with no consequences. Nothing has happened as far as I know. If anything has happened, it hasn't been communicated to me. I'm here for 2 reasons, just to get a public record of sort of what I'm doing, and maybe hopefully I get some support from somebody who can help push this forward, because I don't know how to. I realize this is a minor thing. I can't solve the houseless crisis. I can't solve the climate crisis. I can't solve the drug crisis. I can probably solve this. Just think it's pretty clear cut. But nothing has happened. So my next step is going to be to try and force the Parks Department's hand on this some way. I don't know how to do that, but my idea at this point is to sort of crowdsource a documentary. I will create a documentary film company from crowdsourced funds. We will either hire a drone company or buy a drone, get all the licensing done, file for permits from Parks and Rec, which is a straightforward process. As far as I know, there are no obstacles. If there are obstacles, they are often overlooked. And then, film the urban forest in residential areas and provide, we'll be polite and provide advance notification to residents that we will be doing this. And if they are unhappy about it, we will let them know who to contact. Probably the Portland Parks and Rec or the Portland Prosper Film Office. And if nothing happens at that point, then we will have, I think, an interesting documentary on our hands about public involvement and civic engagement and how government is often not responsive.
And I believe those are your 2 minutes. So thank you so much for returning and bringing up this very important topic.
Yes. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes.
Maybe just to clarify before you leave, I appreciate you're asking for a full ban, but just on the notification point that Prosper Portland has a notification requirement for the use of the drones. There's a 3-day advance notice now required for any drone activity for the areas that they're going to be filming, and that there's a point of contact information and a description of the activity for the filming they're going to be doing. But I appreciate you asking for an outright ban, but that's some part of Prosper Portland's process.
Okay. I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't received any information about that.
So I can send it to you after.
Okay. My understanding is that the intergovernmental agreement, the IGA, says that Portland Parks and Rec sets the permit policies they enforce the permit policies. And all that Prosper Portland does is sort of assist in liaison, essentially. So I don't believe that Prosper Portland can actually set that policy. I'm not certain of that. Obviously, that's just my understanding.
Yeah, great.
And yeah, it's obviously not an outright.
Yeah, they're two issues. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Moving to general announcements. Alana, go ahead.
So first off, I want to really thank everybody on the board for the quick turnaround that happened at the committee meetings to make sure that we could get a letter together to get the board's comments on the record about Portland's government transition and where Parks lands in that. We moved, I think, faster than I've ever seen, and I think that committee process worked really well. I just wanted to throw out there, one of the things that I think we captured well in that process was the start of a list of some of the values or principles that each of the committees thought were important in the work that we do. And given that it seems like we may have other opportunities where we're asked to weigh in very quickly moving forward in this process, I wonder if we want to think about in the next couple of months having committees have a little bit more full discussion about what values or principles they want to have drive our weighing in on things during this transition process so that we can continue to have a quick turnaround like
that. And if I can co-sign with that, especially coming from your working group's lens or point of view would be very helpful for us. Thank you. Any other general announcements? Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and move to approve the September meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All right, all those that are in favor of approving.
I had one point of clarification.
Yes, please go ahead.
I can dump it into the chat, but just to clarify a note I had made, I think what I meant to say was Matt also asked what shifting away from OCCL oversight would practically entail, is they appear to have a very light touch. I struggled a bit to read it and I was like, oh, I think that's what I said. So I would suggest making that clarification.
Thank you. Can you capture that, Michelle?
We can, since it's in the chat.
Yeah. All right. With that clarification or adjustment, all those in favor of approving the September meeting minutes, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 It looks like it's approved. Thank you so much. Moving on to Deputy Director's report, or is that Director's report? Okay.
So I too want to thank both of you for drafting that letter and the entire board for really that quick turnaround. It was pretty unheard of and spectacular. So we really appreciate that work and look forward to working with you all to figure out how we can continue to pivot quickly as needed moving forward. Since then, the City Council has twice rescheduled the work session that we thought was about the city organization. And they held one on October 13th that I tuned into that turned out to be about funding and planning transitional office space while City Hall goes under construction in preparation for the incoming council and mayor and city administrator. We are now aware of 2 work sessions that have been scheduled, one for Friday the 20th and one for Monday the 23rd. Again, we don't know what the agenda or topics are. They've not been advertised on the city website as yet. And we also have not heard specifically what the topics are. But as October 19th was previously identified as a date where they were going to have a public hearing around city organization, I can only guess that one or both of those will be about the topic. So tune in. And we'll see what's going on. We'll be tuning in as well.
Really quickly, it looks like
Sure.
Sabrina has a question.
Yes, Sabrina.
Yeah, I tuned into that as well. Thank you for sending that out. And I'm not sure if anyone in this room is able to answer it, but when I was listening to the discussion, it seemed like it wasn't very clear what this council kind of has control of decision making. And then there were some comments around, well, then the new council can determine that. So I mean, I know this is a bigger than just our board, but I'm wondering, are decisions going to be made now that the new council can just undo? I don't know. It was interesting to watch, but it kind of opened up another can of worms for me.
Yeah, I think in the context of what they were discussing on the 13th, which was around creating office spaces for the new council, I understand that, like that there's on the one hand, you want to prepare for 12 people versus 4 people. And so some decisions have to be made now, but then as it relates to district offices and where those are located, it feels like that might be a more sort of personal choice. And plus you're gonna have multiple council members in any one district. So the 3 of them have to agree whether they want it to be, you know, in a strip mall or, you know, in an office building or whatever the case is. So in that context, I understood that argument, but I think Todd can weigh in about sort of other decision-making authority moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally you can just assume that the future council outside of charter can do whatever they want as long as they have a majority vote on the council to pass the resolution or ordinance. So whatever this council does can be undone by the future council.
And I agree, the work session was interesting, to say the least. Any other questions on that? I mean, I'm sure there's gonna be tons of questions.
Just so everyone knows too, it's video recorded. And
right.
So like, if you don't want to watch it live, you didn't miss anything. And there's this nice feature where you can do it 2 times as fast. And that's actually how I watched it, because I missed the live version. It is high-pitched voices and their heads move fast, but it's half the amount of time.
1.5 is a good.
There you go.
So thanks for the tip, Todd. In your September meeting, which I unfortunately missed, it was shared with you an update on the state of the capital maintenance backlog. A funding ballot measure remains one of our most viable near-term options to begin addressing those critical needs. As you all know, we last conducted a voter opinion poll in 2020, which informed how we moved forward with the Parks levy at that time. So we're updating our understanding of current voter sentiment with another poll this fall. So we're contracting with the same polling firm that we used in 2020. They're called FM3. We actually, Todd, myself, and Sarah had our kickoff meeting today. We're working with them to develop polling questions with input from other council offices during October, and we're hoping to conduct the poll in November and share results in December. We are planning to test voter support for both a May and a November 2024 ballot. And the poll may include some voter opinion questions for city infrastructure beyond park infrastructure. So those conversations that we're having with other council offices is around whether or not they would like to include some questions in our poll. And depending on the commissioner's direction after seeing the polling results, this could be a step towards a ballot initiative moving forward in 2024. Welcome.
Hey, public comment, right?
We've just passed our public comment. Wait,
okay.
But we have another opportunity. So if you'd like to fill out a form, we just might ask you to wait a minute.
Sure.
we moved a little bit faster than usual today. We only had one, so. So I'll just pause there, see if anyone has any questions before I move on to our next item. Yep, sorry, Bon.
No, that's okay. Thank you for the information. I just have a question with respect to the polling. How is that financed?
So we're paying it through Parks operating budget. It's a public poll.
Right, not private.
If other bureaus end up with questions on there, will that cost be split with other bureaus?
Yeah, to date, we don't see like significant questions that are gonna be on there. It might be just some overlapping topics. And so we'll see. If necessary, for sure, we can ask them to contribute $1,000 for their question or whatever. But yeah, it's primarily for Parks and Recreation.
One question looks like Jonathan.
Jonathan?
Yeah, hey everybody. It may be too early to tell, but just curious if you're aware of any other anticipated like funding asks or measures in 2024 that may also be on the ballot.
I mean, I hesitate to say because a lot of it is just like bureaucrats hallway conversation. So like, I think probably the best thing is to see what's put out in the public realm, because you know there's a lot of hopes and aspirations by different agencies and bureaus, and then they never get the traction because they do the homework and there's not political support, so it never even gets to that point. But the things just you've probably seen in the media in the past are things like the fire bureaus looked at something in the past. Portland Bureau of Transportation is facing, you know, a $30 million operating shortfall in their budget for next fiscal year. The housing bond for the region is being looked at by Metro. Like those are some of the topics that have been out in the media.
Okay, I'm going to move on because I see no yellow hands or name tents up. So I wanted to give an update on Grant Bowl and Field. I know this hit the airwaves last month. We've been working with PPS, Portland Public Schools, and we continue to have discussions and we'll be meeting the Grant High School neighborhood and broader communities who are interested in restoring the field. So that meeting is happening next week, right? Mm-hmm. Next week. Todd has been leading discussions with his colleague at PPS to come to an agreement on how to move forward. PPS has expressed an interest in making additional improvements to the Grant Bowl, including seating and lights, which would require a conditional use review and further community engagement. There's a lot of mixed feelings about the lighting in particular in the neighborhood. We and PPS are cognizant of the need to ensure public access to this facility, while at the same time meeting the needs of the Grant High School athletic program. So that's really what's sort of driving our conversations and our negotiations. So we're meeting next week and we're hammering out a negotiation, and we're hoping to have business terms that everyone can be happy with by next week. And then the work to actually write an agreement after that. But the conversations have been pretty good, despite everything that you've been hearing in the press.
Thank you. It looks like we have a question from
Yeah, thank you. So my understanding is that in addition to conditional use, there'll be a design review and so forth required. I'm wondering if there has been any discussion about approaching equity a little bit more holistically with respect to other sports. Again, I'm thinking particularly about other assets that are not available on site that for which student athletes need to travel.
Like what? I'm not sure I understand the question.
Like swimming and water polo.
That
so,
conversation
like,
hasn't gone beyond.
For
that.
Grant High School students?
For any high school students.
Yeah, that's a different conversation. So we have a joint use agreement between Portland Public Schools and Portland Parks and Recreation for many assets, including their swim program, for instance. And so like that is part of that agreement that both organizations are currently in agreement with. We're not in active negotiations around the swimming right now with PPS.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I understand that they're different assets. I mean, I think that if we're going to talk about equity, I think we need to think about it a little bit more comprehensively across different sports and different assets. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
And I know that it's been punted a lot.
Is this an opportunity for like an information report on the topic?
And do you want to share something about what you're doing with
Yeah, it's a little premature, but I think it's okay. It's an okay preview. I have been dreaming of doing a free learn to swim program for second graders. And so we're going to be piloting one in January. So we're really excited. And we have about 12 schools that the PIL has identified. We will do the instruction and make pool time available, and they will be transporting. They will be paying for the expense to transport second graders to our pool. So that's a really exciting program. We're still in negotiation stage, but it's very happy about it. So we partner with PPS on many things. I wanted to report out on Grant Bowl because it had been a topic of interest and had hit the press. And I wanted to make sure that the staff, I love the little heart. Thank you, Allie. And we got some claps.
We're very happy about that.
So we just wanted to make sure that we were, that we want to make sure that the board got updated on Grant Bowl and Fields.
Can I actually, Bonnie, ask you a clarifying question because you brought this up a couple of times. Are you looking for a conversation about use of the pool at Grant and extending the time that the outdoor pools are available, so they might be available for something like swim probably starts too early, but a water polo season? Or are you looking for a conversation about when and how the indoor pools are used or what our indoor pool capacity is? What is I just want to better understand what the conversation is.
I think all of the above. I mean, I'm in particular thinking about the 2021 season in particular, in which the Portland Public Schools swim programs were the only swim programs statewide to not have a season of any sport anywhere in the state because they did not have access to the pools that they normally use. I mean, obviously we can't go back in time and rectify that now for those kids, but I think it is indicative of a longer standing deficiency that exists within the program. And I feel like it's something that we should be thinking about and considering a range of options, whether it's to utilize outdoor facilities that are already in the portfolio or developing other partnerships with other private assets. I just think that we've punted on it so badly for so long. So, and I think that from an equity perspective, we can't continue to say equity and then not look at those kinds of issues.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie.
I'm done with my report.
Thank you, Director Long. Okay, so moving on to the working group reports, which is only Q&A. So Board Affairs Working Group, are there any questions or if there's anything that anybody wants to express regarding the Board Affairs Working Group?
Sabrina.
I had a question about the director's report.
Okay, let's go back to that. Go ahead, Sabrina. No, that's all right. We have time.
Sorry about that. So there was a point about council adopting unified permitting something. Can either Director Long or someone give an update on that or just a little more information about that? That kind of piqued my interest.
I can try. So for the last 2 years, there's been a permitting process improvement task force. It's been convened first by Commissioner Ryan and Commissioner Mapps, and then by Commissioner Rubio and Commissioner Mapps. It involved dozens of staff, subject matter experts, bureau leadership, as well as folks, external stakeholders, mostly in the development community. And we did a lot of work around identifying where there were conflicts and issues that were slowing down permitting processing times. A lot of improvements were identified. Some are in progress. And so there's been a conversation around consolidating development permitting functions from all of the bureaus, and lots of conversation about where that should live, whether or not it's a consolidation or just a unification, like a streamlining, and so that there would be more of an oversight body around that work. And so there's a permit improvement team who currently is working on a work plan. It's due to council on November 1st, which is going to outline how that will move forward. My understanding is that right now, the city organization draft doesn't speak to where it's going to be located, but I imagine that the city organization work session that we hope is next week probably will. And so for parks, what is potentially impacted is our urban forestry development permit work. And so they've been involved in the task force, as have I. Jen Pyra's on the line as well if she wants to add anything. But yeah, that's as much as I know right now, Sabrina.
Okay. Thanks for that. I just know that it is a very hard process from the user perspective, and so that kind of piqued my interest to see what the city's doing to streamline that. But yeah, if there's any more information, I'll look for it in the next report.
Sure. And I would also suggest, I believe that there are web pages specifically about the process improvement task force and the work they've done. So if you're interested, you want to go down a little rabbit hole, you might want to do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions regarding or directed towards Director Long on the report?
Actually, can I just piggyback off of Sabrina really quickly? So we did have a process improvement person previously.
So many PP alliterations.
That was me before when we were doing the natural areas and various things. Is that something that the board is still welcome to be involved in to some degree? I mean, I think that, for permitting, I think clearly it's not driven to the same degree by parks. Clearly the BDS and other permitting agencies are taking a much more leadership type role. But is this something that for other process improvement exercises, is that something that the board can continue to be a party to?
Are you talking about specifically around the government, like the transition work?
Well, no, I was thinking more about process improvement, more, I guess the work that was at the time was from the streamlining that came out of the Nick Fish effort.
Right. So the natural resource service delivery work, that was where we were directed to do some work with the other bureaus from this was a resolution that went through in January. You know, we did updates for the board and some other advisory committees. We did the survey. We got a pretty good, I want to say like a 30% return on the surveys. The survey results have been processed, and we're currently working now with Dawn Uchiyama, who's the director of BES, on again a work plan that will be delivered to City Council likely November 1st. And it will lay out how we want to continue to have the conversation around natural resource service delivery, and it will include a community engagement and stakeholder piece. So I think there is an opportunity. It just hasn't, we really haven't defined what that is just yet.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Looks like we have one more. Sabrina, go ahead.
You're muted, Sabrina.
Quite a good legacy.
Wow, I haven't done that in like a few years. Okay, completely off topic, but I was wondering what the Bureau's policy or procedures or best practices are around land acquisition. What goes into figuring out whether the Bureau is going to acquire land?
Lauren here, so you want to talk about it or do I can talk
Lauren
about
is here, yeah.
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit. Sabrina, it's typically, we have a whole list of areas where we think land would be available to us. Opportunistically, I guess is what I would say. We have a list of criteria for those kind of areas that we're looking for. For example, Powell Park, if there's something adjacent to it, or Powell Butte in this case, if there's a property adjacent to it that will help us with that natural area to expand the natural area and make it more resilient, we might go after that if it becomes on the market. But we do that opportunistically. You know, we kind of hear about things, people tell us about things, they might give us property. We're trying to be a little more strategic about it, as far as trying to be more proactive in that regard, working with our property and acquisition team. But it's a capacity thing in our case. So we could come back at some point in time, and we could show you or we could even just provide it to you, the list of criteria that we look for in a property when people say, oh, my property's for sale, would Parks want to take it, kind of thing. And if it qualifies, then we have some acquisition money set aside, and then we start negotiating with them about that. Does that help?
Yeah, that does help. And then I was going to ask secondly, and you kind of touched on it, there's like a line item in the budget for property acquisition, like you guys have money set aside for when opportunities come up kind of annually?
We have historically had some SDCs set aside for that.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other questions for Director Long?
I don't have a question.
Director, you have a question for Yes.
I just know that we kind of moved into working group reports, mm-hmm. and I know that you had mentioned that they're all Q&A, but I believe that we did have a letter.
Yeah.
Also, okay, just wanted to, I know David's not here, but I just wanted to flag that. Sorry.
No, appreciate that. Thank you so much. So if everybody has gotten their questions to Director Long, and I appreciate it, and we have time in our meeting, so there's no rush.
Nope.
Going to the working groups, going back to Casey and to the Board of Affairs working group, and see if there's any questions regarding their report. All right, looks like there's no questions. Moving to the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group, in which David is not here, but there is a letter that was put forth, and maybe Adrian and the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group can speak on the letter and the request.
We also have Jen Cairo on the line if anyone has any questions.
Yes, if you want me to say just a couple of words, if other folks are not there, happy to.
Please do.
A real brief background. So this is a letter that was presented actually at the last meeting, I believe, of the board. And so the request was made actually for the Parks Board to support it. And do folks have access to a copy of it?
Yes, what I believe is that the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group wanted to bring this before the board for a vote. And if you can provide some background information on what is in the letter.
Yes, and is there a copy? I'm not looking at the materials. Yes. Was a copy provided? Okay, awesome. Yeah, so fantastic. So basically, this was a letter that supported or actually objected to some of the proposed changes in tree code from a government advisory committee that would not require basically on private land development. I'm going to hackney this since I don't know the absolute details. Whoops, sorry about that.
Did we lose Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Jen, would you like to jump in?
Yes, please.
Sure, I can do that. Sounds like Adrian's got a bad connection. Yes, so the letter is to City Council, and it's regarding Governor Kotek's Housing Production Advisory Council. And that is a council that's meeting now and has been meeting for a couple months. And they have been discussing how to reduce barriers for housing production. And they have discussed a wide array of different potential recommendations they might make to Governor Kotek. Among those have been some recommendations. They haven't finalized them yet. They're discussing them yet about potentially eliminating tree regulations in local municipalities like Portland regarding trees and other environmental concerns. We, city staff, have presented to the Housing Production Advisory Council, really trying to clarify what Portland's tree code does and does not do, stressing that the code has flexibility and predictability for property developers and was also created out of the work of a lot of city staff and grassroots community movement and nonprofit organizations in the city several years ago, and recognize the need to develop property as well as retain trees and plant trees back when feasible. In other words, saying that the city's code already addresses some of the concerns that are being raised. Therefore, the Forestry Commission discussed this and decided to write a letter to council expressing concern with the proposals to eliminate tree regulations in local municipalities that are expected to potentially come from the Housing Production Advisory Council to Governor Kotek. You, the Parks Board, are being asked to join with the Forestry Commission in signing on to that letter, which you have in your packet, to express that concern about eliminating tree regulations to City Council.
Thank you, Jen. Looks like we have a hand up from Matt. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Corbett. Jen, thanks for that summary. I feel like, and I'm struggling to find it now, but I thought I saw a reference to Governor Kotek rejecting that proposed recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Matt. Yes, just recently. So this is a moving item. Things change week to week. It is an advisory council that is still in process. They will not be making their recommendations, we understand, until the end of December to the governor. But we have heard recently from Governor Kotek's office that the tree-related proposals that HPAC, as they're called, has been discussing are not of interest to the governor. That was known to the Forestry Commission, and they chose to write the letter regardless because HPAC continues and there's really no way of knowing what their proposals to the governor will be and what the governor's perspective will be at that time.
Thank you. Allie.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, been tracking this issue back in the legislative session when it was, under HB 3414, and it was a statewide thing. It's kind of coming up and it's not going away. And it's local and it's statewide. I'm wondering, and I'm so glad that we're talking about trees, but as you said, there are a whole bunch of environmental concerns that are roped in, that are wrapped up with housing and the governor's vision for what housing looks like. Is it mission creep to talk about or to mention those other issues as well as trees, since it will affect, everything from floodplains to wetlands to, all sorts?
Yeah, Allie, I don't know the status of those other proposals that you've mentioned, which, yes, I've understood those as well. I know that, well, there is time, I guess. I'm not sure how time sensitive this is, since HPAC has said they have until the end of December. I guess my concern at this point is if the Parks Board wants to add that content to the Forestry Commission letter, it's got to go back to the Forestry Commission. We have that back and forth with it. I'm open to any suggestions. The decision is yours, of course, not mine. I might suggest that if the Parks Board is supportive, that they sign on to this letter and then perhaps work on another letter that is in regard to other concerns that you all may have, and the Forestry Commission might want to join that letter regarding what HPAC is discussing.
That's helpful. I don't want to hold anything up, but I do think perhaps, thinking of it in a larger context as well, because it's going to impact everything. These housing policies would probably be a helpful conversation to have, and maybe our own letter.
Yeah. If it's helpful, I would say this with the Forestry Commission. Excuse me, Dr. Corbin, if I'm overstepping, but if Allie, if you wanted to draft something in regards to the other environmental concerns for the Parks Board's consideration, and if the Parks Board wanted the Forestry Commission to consider it, that might be a route forward with that another letter.
It's not overstepping, and I think that I appreciate you airing that option, and I think it's an option that we want to also consider. Moving forward, are there any other questions before we bring this to a vote? Casey, go ahead.
I guess I wouldn't mind somebody explaining to me the strategy of why we're addressing City Council as opposed to going straight to COTEC's office or HPAC. And I also wonder, if we're going to take this on, if we shouldn't do it with the forest help, but on our own. I guess I'm trying to, I guess I'm interested in the strategy as to why we're going to City Council as opposed to just going to people who have more control over state law, because this is a state law issue, not a local issue.
Yeah. Also good questions. I'll speak to that, and maybe Adina or Todd would want to jump in as well. But
Jen, if you can hold it for 1 second, because I think Director Long got there a little bit before you.
Okay. Sorry,
and then we'll have you after. No worries.
Yeah.
And then it looks like Sabrina has a question as well.
So this bureaus don't respond directly to the state or federal government at all. We always go through the Office of Government Relations that gets vetted through City Council. We have to make sure that we're all on the same page. You're an independent body. You're an independent body, and you can write the letter to whomever you choose. In this case, though, it would then go to City Council, who would advocate, it sort of adds to the advocate against a certain thing. So I don't think you need to have it go through City Council.
Okay. Just to counter, just remind everybody, under the authority that we presently have, since it hasn't been amended, we have the right to go to anybody, any governmental body, right?
And I was stating that to be true, and I think it's perfectly reasonable for the board to let the Urban Forestry Commission to move on with their letter, so we're not holding them up, and then maybe compose one that is a little bit more inclusive, because obviously we have time. So that's an option that you all can weigh. And I think Sabrina has her hand up.
Jen, just really quickly, because I did cut you off, was there an addition to what Director Long provided?
I'm trying to remember what, Casey, didn't you have another question? Oh, of course, this is what I was going to say. Of course, Parks Board members are also individuals who have the right to express their opinions as well. And if you were asking that, Casey, of course, individual Parks Board members can express their concerns to Governor Kotek as well on this or anything else. And I wanted to add, I don't know if Melody Brooks is around or not.
Yes.
Yeah, Melody, I just want to double check on the Parks Board writing to the governor instead of city council. And I know you've been really involved with the Office of Government Relations on this.
Yes, it's definitely something I would want to talk to OGR. I understand that you have your own rights to approach different bodies statewide, but I also want to emphasize that the city has a strategy when it comes to housing production and how we want to work with the governor's office and how we want to be seen as being proactive and cooperative and in educating the governor's office on how it's not housing or the environment or housing or trees. We have to move forward in a progressive way on both of those fronts. And so it's a very sensitive issue and politically things are tied to each other. So if the board does decide to move forward and approach the committee outside of what Parks is doing to approach the city council, we would definitely want to coordinate and make sure that we're all on the same page and that at least OGR is aware of this coming down the pipe.
Thank you for that. Sabrina, please go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read this letter in full, but there is a letter from Director Long and the Director of Planning and Sustainability. It looks like it was August. Is this in regard to the same topic? What was the feedback from that? Because it looks like it's directed to the committee. So yes. Is this urban forestry another letter to kind of double down on that, or?
Yes, the letter that myself and Donnie Oliveri penned went to the committee, but it was authored and vetted through the Office of Government Relations. And yeah, and this would just be another entity, a stakeholder group that might wish to weigh in on this policy situation.
Have you all heard back from them?
Not officially.
I missed it. What was that?
No, we have not. And Todd giggled at that question.
Yeah, we wouldn't expect to hear back from them necessarily, Sabrina. It would be, we're informing a governor's convened council that is exploring a topic area. And so any comments that they get, comments were solicited from cities, including Portland. They're supposedly taking those into account when they compile their recommendation to the governor. So that like whatever gets recommended is more or less the feedback that we would see.
Thank you, Sabrina. Is there any follow-up? All right, Elena, go ahead.
So I'm hearing us go down a couple of different tracks here on what we might want to do. And I just want to take a minute, if we can, to kind of think about condensing the various conversations that we're having. It feels like we have two options. One is to say when we work together with other groups, we are more powerful. Having this come from two boards that have different missions, but missions that come together in certain places to say, to give the city the power to say, our boards that touch this work are all in alignment here. Is one path. That's a path that allows us to continue working on really timely letters instead of inadvertently getting drawn into details where we try to coordinate so much that it takes longer. I think our other path is to say we actually think that Parks touches so much more than forestry does on this, that we need to have our own more expansive letter because the work that we do is more expansive and touches this in a broader way. And we want to take the time to work with the Office of Government Relations to figure out what is most helpful, and if it's most helpful for us to be a bit of an agitator and go around council, or if it's most helpful for us to go through council, and to work some of those political channels to figure out how we can have the most impact. Because if the goal here is impact, I want to make sure that we're not just doing what feels good, but what will have the most impact. I don't know if we're most impactful having a broader letter or having a broader coalition on the letter, but that feels like the thing to me that we need to try to figure out what we want to do on if we agree that we want to have the most impact possible here.
Thank you. And
Casey has a response to that.
I was first. I'm gonna take it.
You're the chair.
I will definitely make space for it. So I think it doesn't have to be an or, it can be an and. So we can sign on to this letter and we can pen our own. So that is an option. One thing, and I made it clear to the the Land Use and Infrastructure Working Group on the letter, is that when we think about parks and recreation, we usually think about public spaces. This particular letter is especially looking at private spaces, private personal lots. And I find it highly irresponsible for us to not think about housing and providing nature and green spaces and ecology, because it can perpetuate even more urban heat island or exacerbate it. And so I think there is an opportunity to speak on the Parks and Rec side, that if they are going to take away trees in one area, that they need to think about how they're going to supply it in another area. And that's a letter that we can write. And again, my only sticking point with signing on to the letter how it is that it speaks to public private property, but that doesn't mean that we can't sign on to it. So what I'm proposing for everybody to think about is, the first vote would be, do we want to sign on to this letter as a board? 2, do we want to pen our own letter? And then 3, who are we going to be, if we do want to pen that our own Parks and Recreation Advisory Board letter, who do we want to send it to? So there might be 3 votes on the floor, so we can handle this. And hopefully what we did last month with the letter, we will do something similar and be able to pivot quickly to produce a new one. So I'll have you sit with that as I give the floor to Casey.
It's just going back to Alana's statement. Actually, one thing I want to say is that I think the letter that the Urban Forestry Commission did is a great letter. I really do like the content. The biggest concern I still have is that if you want it to be effective, you should address the entity that is trying to rechange the rules. And so I'm a little step back a bit that we go through council to ask them to monitor what's going on. I would rather just go right to the source, and to the extent that these letters are effective at all, go to the source that is trying to make the change. And I think that is going to be the most effective thing to do. So I would advocate for that. In some ways, I don't mind just signing on saying we agree, but I think in order to be much more effective, we really need to go to the source.
Thank you, Casey. It looks like we have 2 hands up. Jen, please go ahead, and then Aaron.
Thank you. Dr. Corbin, I'm sorry, I might not have fully understood what you were talking about in relation to private property. I wanted to make sure folks understood that Parks and Recreation has responsibilities implementing the city's regulations around private property development and trees. And that's why that particular area is germane. Parks also has responsibilities about implementing tree regulations on public property, city-owned property, and also in non-development situations on both private and city-owned property as well.
Yes. And so just to clarify that, when looking at what is on the 3rd paragraph within the letter regarding lot sizes, which speaks specifically to private property, I think there can be a sticky wicket, if you will, about how people manage their private property as homeowners, and then also thinking about these sort of larger rental corporations that might have several lots throughout the city. And they might cause a burden to these sort of small, not necessarily wealthy homeowners that might need to bring in ADU units to help out their own living situations. I'm just saying that it is a sticky wicket, and that when we're talking about private property, there's a lot more that goes into it when we have to also think about homeowners during this time. So I'm not against the letter, but I think there's a lot more, some tension there when we are talking about it.
I hear you. Thank you. If it's helpful, private lots less than 5,000 square feet are exempt during development from any tree regulations, which is many in the city. And the types of concerns you're raising, very valid concerns, would be the sort of thing that we would want to potentially look at when we do tree code amendments.
Absolutely. Thank you. Erin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll make this quick. I just, I don't have any new ideas. I just want to express my support for two things I've heard from, I think, a few different people. One is the idea of writing directly to the state, not having it go through city council. And the other idea is I do like the idea of joining forces, you know, just to increase our voice. So with the Urban Forestry Commission, that's all.
Thank you. So I want to go ahead. Is there a motion to go ahead and sign on to the Urban Forestry Commission letter as a board?
Can I ask one quick question before?
Go ahead.
For folks who have been working with the Urban Forestry Commission, are they wanting to send the letter as is for sure, get this moving as quickly as possible? Or if we came back with a friendly amendment and said, we like your letter, would you be interested in sending it to the governor and CCing council? Is there time and space for that?
From my understanding of the conversation, the letter is as is.
Okay.
We are our own body that we can send our own letter.
Certainly.
Jen, anything to add? That was my understanding as well. The option was either for the board to sign on as is, and otherwise Urban Forestry Commission would move forward and send a letter.
Yes, and furthermore, the Urban Forestry Commission is advisory to me, the Parks Director, the Commissioner in charge of Parks, and the City Council. So I think, as Melody shared, it would be challenging for the Forestry Commission to write a letter to the governor.
And at the heart of the ask is really asking council to monitor what is going on. Is that correct?
That's right. To draw attention to it and hopefully have city council express an opinion that is shared by many in the city with the Office of Government Relations and therefore the governor's office.
Thank you so much. All right, so we are going to close down the debate for now. And is there a motion that a board member wants to bring forward regarding voting on the Urban Forestry Commission letter as is?
I move that we vote to, I move that we vote on whether to sign on to the Urban Forestry Commission letter to council around tree canopy and housing.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. I believe we've had enough discussion unless there's any last minute discussion.
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna object to that. And the reason why I'm objecting to it is because I think it makes us look like we're flailing around. If we're gonna end up, and I think we are gonna end up with a suggestion that we write to HPAC directly, it may look like we're just kind of going all over the place, but the scattershot approach may work. But that's the reason why I would say object to this.
I'm willing to withdraw my motion if we want to have the other vote first. If we think we should vote in the opposite order to ensure that we don't send two letters.
You want to put that motion forward?
Want to do the votes Corbin suggested in the opposite order?
Sure, yeah. And I guess if I can make the motion for the other one.
Yes.
Which is that The board will, where do you want this to go? Where do you want the writing to go? You two guys, land use and infrastructure.
Put it in the motion. Where do you think it should go for us to vote on it?
Do you want the process we did last time around or something different?
We have more time this time. That's what I'm thinking.
And Allie's offered to help with the language.
And we're going to copy a lot from this too, because I think it's a really good letter. It makes a lot of really good points.
See, just
I would move that the board authorize the chair, co-chair, and whoever they wish, the chair and the co-chair, whenever they wish to help them, to draft a letter to HPAC with a copy to City Council along the same lines and with the same points and such other points as they deem appropriate as the urban forestry letter.
Nicely done.
Way to lawyer that.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
I think Sabrina, is that a question or is that a vote?
It's comment.
Okay. Do we have a second first, and then we can open it up for comment and discussion?
This is Chris. I'll second.
Thank you. We have a second. Opening up for discussion. Sabrina, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've heard though from staff that I don't want to put words in people's mouth, but that there is a process for government relations, and that we as a body are advisory. Well, the urban forestry is advisory to individuals in the city. So I'm a little, I don't know if concerned is the right word, but I do want to make sure that we're taking into account the staff's perspective. Is this going to make their job harder, or is it, good for us to write a letter to commissioners so that the commissioners can go, advocate for the city? I just think that should be taken into consideration. I feel like I've heard that a couple times now.
Thank you. Alana and then Director Long.
Sabrina, I hear that, and I don't want to have us dismiss those concerns. I think that what was important to me in the motion Casey made was that this letter would have a CC to council. And I think that with that, we could probably, unless Dr. Corbin would object to this, we could probably commit to making sure that that's not the first time they see the letter, and that the commissioner in charge of parks and staff who work with the government relations team at the city could get an advanced copy of the letter so that they know what we're sending, and we're making sure that that they have an opportunity to raise any red flags. Certainly not write the letter for us. That's our prerogative as a board, but raise any red flags about things where we might have political blind spots that we should take into account before we send anything.
Director Long.
I was just going to suggest that there might be a compromise similar to what Alana just stated, that any content could be shared with the Office of Government Relations through Melody Brooks. And then, so it's just sort of like a nod, and to ensure that they feel like the content is appropriate and in alignment with how the city would like to communicate with the state. So Melody, I'd love to hear if you think that's an appropriate compromise.
Yes, I think the OGR will be also able to share with us any things that we may not be considering, because there could be some other concerns based on what the content is that could actually be more harmful than beneficial into moving us forward in this conversation. So yes, I do think at least running the language by them, and that way we can get feedback and the board can have a better idea of the best way to move forward.
Thank you. Casey.
I don't mind amending my motion to add at the very end with input from OGR.
All right. Did you get that language, Michelle? You did, or you did?
I did not, but I will.
She'll listen to the recording.
Okay. Because I was really hoping for you to repeat it back, because we might have to vote on this really soon. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I like the idea of pulling multiple levers. So while I appreciate copying council on a letter, I don't think that's the same thing as asking them to take action. So while I appreciate the Forestry Commission is going to do that, I also would support us asking council to take that action too, because I think they probably will carry more weight than the letter we submit.
Thank you, Matt. Todd, go ahead.
And this is kind of a technicality, but I think Jen Cairo said it, where the Parks Board has the authority in its charter, if you will, to advise anybody. The Urban Forestry Committee, per code, is the city forester, the director, the commissioner in charge of Bureau of Parks and Recreation, and Citizens Budget Advisory Committee. So it's different.
Right.
So just so everyone's clear, that you both have two different roles.
Thank you. All right, Casey, do you want to do the wonderful job of
the whole thing? Can I just?
I got Casey moved that the board authorize the chair and vice chair and whoever they wish to help them draft a letter to HPACCC to city council, and then I lost the last part.
In consultation with the Office of Government Relations. Does that work?
I feel like
I'm
making points similar to those made in the Board of Forestry letter, with the addition of any other topics germane to our work that we feel necessary to also include.
Correct.
Something.
That's what I said.
What they said.
That is what's on the floor. Do I have a second?
I believe you had a second from Chris previously.
Yeah, I'll second again.
Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, please hands raised, digital or in person if possible. And that looks unanimous.
I don't see anything from Adrian.
Okay. I wonder, Adrian, are you abstaining from voting?
Okay.
Okay, so it looks like it's unanimous. So that passes. Director Long.
Jen, I just want to thank you, and if you could relate to the Urban Forestry Commission, thank them for putting forward a letter, for offering the opportunity for the Parks Board to sign on, and also for you shepherding, you and Melody both for shepherding this this issue forward to our advisory committees. Thank you.
But there is a second vote, right? We have one more vote. So does anybody want to put in motion for the Portland Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to sign on to the Urban Forestry Commission letter as is? Because we can do both if we choose to. We have a motion.
Put that motion forward.
All right, do we have a second?
This is Chris, I'll second again.
I have a second. All those in favor?
Wait, no discussion?
Oh, open for discussion. Thank you, Bonnie.
Sorry. Quick question for clarification. So one of the things that this letter does say that gives me a little bit uneasy is it says Urban Forestry Commission urges you to monitor the HPAC process to actively oppose these HPAC proposals. But my understanding is the actual proposals are still in play. So this suggests that we're going to oppose the proposals regardless of how they evolve. Is that correct? Anybody who's tracking this more closely?
That'd be Adrian. Would be helpful. Can you answer that, or Jen?
I can. I've seen Adrian in and out. I think she might be having connectivity issues. So Bonnie, there have been various specific items surrounding trees discussed. For example, removing any tree regulations on trees that are less than 60 inches diameter at breast height, of which we only have a couple hundred in the whole city because they're huge. I think the Forestry Commission letter is in reference to those items that have been discussed by HPAC already and are about removing Portland's existing tree code. I think what their intention is regardless of the discussion that comes later, they want to express concern that the state would override the city's tree regulations.
Thank you. Yeah, the thing that just makes me a little bit uneasy, like I said, is that it just says to actively oppose these HPAC proposals, and then it just goes on. So it's extremely rigid and makes me a little bit uneasy. So for what it's worth.
Heard. Thank you. Sabrina, go ahead.
I think Casey made a good point earlier about, you know, if we're writing our own letter directly to the committee and, you know, copying council members, and now we're going to go through, you know, OGR, then I don't know that it also makes sense to co-sign a letter to council. I think we can kind of tell the urban forestry, like, we heard you and we support this, and that's why we're going to take this action. But logistically, I don't know if it makes sense to do both.
Thank you, Sabrina. Allie.
I think it would be pretty easy to do both and reference in the beginning of our letter that we did sign on to urban forestry and stand united with them. And we also have additional concerns that we want to bring forward. So I think we could highlight that letter and then use it as a jumping off point to be able to talk about expanded concerns. Because I do think it is, I would like to support urban forestry in this. They're the experts in here, and I think that adding to that voice is valuable.
Thank you. Alana.
I worry that if we reference having sent a letter to the city in our letter to the folks at the state, that it almost seems like we're not on the same page with the city, and why are we then going around them? Why did they not take action? I think we could give a nod to urban forestry, both in sending our thanks through Adrian and Jen for them ensuring that this issue stays on our radar. And we could do that as well through taking some of this language and saying at the state level, as our city's Urban Forestry Commission has been discussing with city leaders, there are these issues. We want to make sure that those and other issues are brought to your attention directly. I think that there's a way that we could pull in the language from this letter, but I do worry about how the optics look for folks at the city if it looks like we've signed a letter there and then also go around them and send a direct letter.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All right, we're moving forward with the vote. Those that are voting for the board to sign on to the letter, please raise your hands. One, two, 7. Signing on. Those who are voting against signing on the letter. One, two, three. What is that? 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
4. Looks like we're signing on to the letter of the board. Thank you very much, folks. Is there any other discussion before we move forward? Great. We are going to move on to the capital selection process. I believe Lauren.
Yes.
Can everybody see the screen here?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. I'm Lauren McGuire, Asset and Development Division Manager. And we want to talk today about how a capital project is on the capital improvement project list, as well as the Asset and Development Division work plan. And we fund it and then implement the project. So every year we review and select the capital growth projects, the major maintenance capital projects, and then throughout the year, emergency major maintenance capital projects. And we're the lead in the Bureau on that process. So we're going to just talk a little bit about what they are, what capital projects are, how they're funded, and explain a little bit of the way we calculate prioritization using equity and the level of service, and then we'll share the typical annual process with you. So capital projects are broken down into 4 types. The growth projects are projects that expand the capacity of the park system. So think new parks, expanded boundaries of existing parks or features in parks. Primarily funded by system development charges, which are collected from development projects. And these are all estimated over $10,000. Major maintenance projects, on the other hand, are capital projects that are repair projects that don't really expand the capacity of the park system, but they are generally repairing or renovating existing parks or park features, and are usually general funded or bond funded. Emergency major maintenance projects, on the other hand, are projects, again, that don't expand the capacity, but are health, safety, environmental implications, and therefore the emergency. ADA program projects are transition plan projects that have been put into our system, noted in our ADA transition plan. So today we're just going to focus on the growth and major maintenance projects, and we have a process tailored to each of those types. The funding for those types come from, as you see up here, for the capital growth projects, primarily system development charges, grants, partnerships, or bond funding. The major maintenance projects are funded primarily by general fund, bond funding, Build Portland funding, or one-time council asks. This year, in our fiscal year 24-25, we had $18.9 million in SDC dollars generated, but we really only have $6.5 million to allocate because we replenished the SDC reserve that we keep of $10 million that had been spent last year. And we funded some trail grant matches. So in the major maintenance world, which again, general funded, this year's 2024-25 process will have $5 million to allocate. We should be spending $55 million a year to address our $600 million capital maintenance backlog, which I know you've heard many times. But the good news is some of our major maintenance can be handled from other bond funding. We did get $31.8 million in Metro local share, and we are still finishing spending the 2014 $68 million parks replacement bond. We also got about $15 million to Build Portland to renovate our Mount Scott project. There's also possibility of one-time council asks, although those possibilities are becoming fewer and fewer. So the capital project selection process is delivered by committee and subject matter experts. The guiding principles are up here on the screen. So we're trying to prioritize capital projects that promote equity and reduce disparities and which sustain and modernize our park system. We try and utilize the transparent and inclusive process, and we follow a data-informed, accountable, coordinated approach, which considers all the park system needs holistically. We try and ensure that projects have a maximum positive community impact, and we try to guard against inequitable or influence when they're selecting the projects. So the two different programs that we prioritize and select projects are on the capital growth program, which implements those projects, and the renovation program, which prioritizes and selects projects to keep natural and built assets safe, accessible, functional, and stable. We're constantly adding projects to the capital project list. You're probably wondering how they get on there. There are 1,900 on the list currently, and we review those every year. And the way they get on the list is from strategic documents like our Healthy Parks, Healthy Portland, from park master plans, from natural area restoration matrix, from our level of service that we've conducted, and sometimes by staff or community members. And their major maintenance projects come onto the list from system assessments and work orders that are really too big for our team to, our PRMS team to do. And so then they automatically get put on the major maintenance capital list. So I'm just going to talk for a minute about what the level of service is. The planning program recently concluded this effort, and the purpose of it was to try and help plan the system's growth and care over time by trying to identify goals and set expectations for various assets by talking to the community and asking them what they thought. So, for example, how far would you be interested in walking to a playground? And most people said half a mile. And so that allowed us to show areas. So we had different assets that we looked at, and it allowed us to create a map of areas where we're missing service, essentially. It also helped us identify areas where we might be providing more service than other areas in the community have. So here's a map of it, and you can see the blue areas. I think some people on the Parks Board have seen this before. The blue areas are households within a half mile of a Portland Parks developed park or natural area. The darker blue area is within a half mile of a non-Portland Park developed park or natural area, which might be like Metro, for example. And the areas that are white on the screen are areas not served at all by assets. So you can see awful lot of white areas in east part of the city. Not surprising, because that's the area that we inherited from Multnomah County, and they did not have a lot of parks in those areas. That map, by the way, doesn't include community center service. So how do we start to select our projects and what kind of criteria we use? We always start with the equity criteria tool. So that looks at who's being served within the service radius of the park. So people of color, people under 18 years old, children, youth, and households below the poverty status is the way we've done this historically. And then for capital growth projects, we look at that equity score, and then we look at the service variety and the households, and we multiply those together, and our maximum score, 5 in each area, is 125. So what we mean by service variety weight rating is how well is it served compared to the level of service recommendation that we just showed you on the map, for example. And the household rating is how many households are currently being served and how many more would be served by the proposed improvements, for example. Mill Park, which is one of the parks that we're currently building, had a total opportunity score of 60, and that's in East Portland. So that just gives you an example of one of the ways we look at. We also look at whether it's going to serve seniors, differently abled individuals, and other items depending on the proposed project. This next map shows the level of service by varieties. So in this map, the areas that are red are the areas that have the most recreation and assets. So most recreation experiences and the most assets in the city. You see not a lot of them in the edge of Forest Park, not a lot of them out here in East Portland. And that's based on 13 assets in our system. For major maintenance projects, the prioritization, we already talked about our $600 million major maintenance gap. We only get $5 million a year at the most, as we said. And so we have to be pretty careful about how we select them. So we prioritize them, again, based on the same equity rating, which is diversity, youth, and poverty. And then we also look at the likelihood of the asset failing. And that's based on Public Works engineering standard, and also the consequence of failure if it does go. For example, if you're in East Portland and you only have one playground within 2 miles of you and it fails, that has a really high consequence of failure. So that's some of the things we look at. These are just some of the other considerations that we think about when we go through the process. Are there any partnerships? Where is it? How are we looking at the projects geographically? What are the finances that might affect it? What are the costs per user? What's the revenue generation potential? What's the effect on our operations and maintenance work? And what are potential future impacts? What's the timing? What are the staffing demands? There's lots of things that go into the thought of this, and what's the level of ADA impact, among other things. This is just to show you, I have two images to show you the development of expenditures over time. This is before we had the equity tool, and you can see we've increased the percentage of projects that are in areas of either low income, people of color, and youth populations above the Portland average over time. This is a map image kind of showing similar. These are the growth projects that we've done in the last 5 years all over the city. The bigger circles mean more money we're spending. And then the renovation projects that we've done all over the city. You can see quite a concentration downtown. That's because that's where we have our oldest facilities in the city. And then this is just a combination of the two, which shows expenditures all over the city. For this current year, a bit of an anomaly has happened with the capital project selection process because we have fewer SDC funds available to allocate in fiscal year 24-25. First, because we're restoring the $10 million contingency. Second, because we have a giant North Portland Aquatic Center that you're going to hear about in a minute. That is going to be very expensive. We don't have a lot of money to allocate. We end up with about $6.5 million in SDCs to allocate at the end of this process. And the first priority in our allocations is to fund projects that have already started, but maybe due to inflation or increased project costs or material delays and other things, they're costing more than we anticipated. And we want to be able to deliver those projects to the community without doing value engineering. So first, our recommendation is to backfill those projects. The remainder of the funding then is projected to go to the North Portland Aquatic Center. And however, we do have another pot of funding, which is the Central City SDC projects. And there's $14.8 million in that particular fund. And some of the things that we've been wanting to prioritize in that area are Darcel Plaza, formerly O'Brien Square, which is likely we'll need about $500,000 now to develop. And then there's lots of other projects in the Central City, OMSI, the Broadway Corridor, Slabtown, the Green Loop, the Greenway, Albina Vision, as you've heard people talk about, Montgomery Park, Old Town Skate Park, and the Zidell project as well. In the world of major maintenance, we have $5 million, as we said, to allocate here. Again, we take $1.2 million off the top that goes to do our ADA transition plan program. We also hold $1 million for emergencies and contingencies. We also have a $250,000 pot of money we always put aside every year for the Portland Parks Foundation Play Piece program that we work with them on. And then normally we reserve enough to replaster one pool shell to keep them on roughly a 10-year cycle. So our project priorities this year are backfilling existing projects and at-risk asset removals, as well as community center, HVAC, and electrical, some priority play areas based on equity, like Lincoln, Glenwood, and Hancock, and other things like that. And that's it. Any questions on that?
Thank you, Lauren. opening up the floor for any board questions. Lynn, go ahead.
So I was reading about the document, and in there it mentioned quite a bit of maintenance is to take care of places that are vandalized. There's a lot of vandalism, and when it takes place, yeah, we would like to have the funding to fix it, but then how do we prevent things being vandalized? Are we partnering with anyone in other agencies, bureaus, where they will help deter some of the vandalism that are just in plain sight? We can't possibly release everything, right? And then we end up paying the price, fixing things that are not being deterred from vandalism.
You froze during the middle of your question, but I think what you were asking is, are we partnering with anyone to try and deter some of the vandalism? Is that accurate?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, even in our bureau, we have lots of different divisions that participate in trying to keep our parks clean and safe and repair vandalism throughout the system. But also, so we're partnering with rangers and with land stewardship and our professional repair and maintenance service group staff within our bureau. But we also partner with the police bureau on, on trying to make things more safe. And there's lots of entities that we work with within the city to try and clean up camps before we go in there. A lot of, and it's kind of a reoccurring event, unfortunately, but I think the mayor's effort to try and make it illegal to camp on the streets and that kind of thing is going to be super helpful coming forward. Adina, is there anything else you want to throw into that, or Todd?
Yeah, I think you got it. The mayor's office especially has been like augmenting our available resources on, contracting, graffiti removal companies and others to help out. But Suen, for sure, it's like a very difficult problem if you're going to do it on the preventative side. There's lots of reasons why people are vandalizing public property.
Thank you. I have an ask and a comment. So my ask is, can we disaggregate the racial data so we don't have this really fictitious binary between white and non-white folks? So we can clearly see who is being served and who might be being neglected or underserved through the racial categories. Because we might be doing really well from one group of folks and completely missing the mark for another group of folks. And it's really hard to see based on the data presented. My other comment / ask is, whenever we're talking about vandalism or issues around vandalism, could we not speak to the homeless population as the obvious culprit of doing that? Because teenagers, there's a lot of people who are housed that are doing some really questionable things in our public spaces, and not to just jump to a conclusion that it must be the unhoused folks. Can we just hold that as a tenet moving forward, please? That is what I have to say, and I do appreciate the information that you have provided. Any other questions from the board? Sabrina, go ahead.
Yeah, just piggybacking, I noticed a lot of the vandalism as well, and I know that there have been some efforts, I think, from the mayor's office and even from Prosper Portland. I don't know who does what, specifically in terms of vandalism for storefronts, nonprofits, and small businesses. Rosewood, we've had our fair share of broken windows and graffiti and all of that. And so I'm wondering, are you all having any conversations? Well, one, is it as big of an issue, I guess, as I am perceiving it, having seen it in the report? You know, is it like really taking, you know, money away from or taking a large share of the line item, but then also outside of just like kind of Dr. Corbin said, housing and those living on the street, are you all having talks with the mayor's office or anyone around what are we doing as a city to kind of curb that vandalism? Because I feel like it's an issue that goes beyond parks, but I'm sure that is a big impact on parks property.
So do you want to start, Lauren, or do you want me to jump in?
Go ahead, you can go.
Yeah, so it is a big problem, like safety, security, both of people, the visitors, our workers, and the physical assets and places is probably like our #1 challenge as a bureau. And we have a large dispersed geographic area in our city. We're not a condensed city. And we have a relatively small amount of security, rangers, and police. So that is not going to be a solution, you know? So it's a very challenging environment. Lots of open for good ideas or partnerships if people have them, you know? It's a block by block kind of approach at this point. Park by park for us.
Thank you, Chris. Go ahead.
My comment is on a different line in terms of maintenance, is that when I was reading the report just from the Parks Department in the maintenance and infrastructure sections of actually fixing projects, it seems like there's a lot of additional personnel costs that are coming in to fix these maintenance projects, especially on the weekends or off hours. And kudos to the Portland Parks and Recreation staff that do this work, but has there ever been an analysis on the amount of personnel costs that are going into repairing these maintenance jobs and off hours, and what that could have been done in terms of buying something new instead of just trying to replace kind of failing assets that we have?
Yeah, so we do actually in our work order system, we track we track things by different categories, and one of them is vandalism. So we know what percentage of vandalism we're tracking in each of the work groups. And we've just started doing that in the last about year and a half, I'd say. So we don't have a lot of historic data, but we know it's pretty frustrating because things are getting broken. And we do have, now that we have the levy, thankfully, we have more resources so that we do have that option of not band-aiding it, of actually going and replacing it. So that's something that we look at too. So I hope that answers your question.
And Lauren, you're also trying to track like preventative maintenance items,
right?
Versus like, yeah. So that's
labor hours.
So
yeah, and preventative maintenance we don't get to a lot of, unfortunately, even though we, like for our community centers, we cycle through every community center in a specific couple of weeks, and we focus on that for those couple of weeks. But we need to do way more preventative work in order to extend the life of our assets than we have capacity for, basically.
Thank you. That was what I was asking about, is more the preventative maintenance.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you so much, Lauren, for that informational report. And because we've been jumping around the agenda quite a bit, I have neglected to ask if there were any questions regarding a few of the working groups. So the Financial Sustainability Working Group, are there any questions regarding their report? Or is there a statement that the group would like to make? Thank you. Community Engagement Working Group, are there any questions the board would like to ask of them, or if there's a comment that the working group would like to make? Thank you. And the Programming and Recreation Working Group, are there any questions from the board? Is there a statement that the working group would like to make? All right, thank you so much, folks. It looks like we're back on track.
So just a point of order, Corbin. I think Jessica Green is here now, and we
Yeah.
also skipped over the.
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And it looks like Jessica is here. Thank you so much for joining us from the Portland Parks Foundation. If you are ready, I would love for you to introduce yourself and please deliver the report.
Yeah, sure. Hello, everybody. I'm Jessica Green, she, her pronouns. I am the interim executive director at the Parks Foundation. I've actually been here almost 7 years. I think it was 7 years ago, and I attended a Parks Board meeting to understand what this group was all about, which was very helpful. So I am new to this role, but not new to the foundation or PPNR or the Parks Board. Anyway, so I guess just kind of getting to business to keep us on track. The Parks Foundation, right now, there's not really, we're sort of getting into the phase of what our new recruitment will be for the next executive director. But in the meantime, our plan is really to just keep moving things forward as is and continue to have conversations about projects. Our biggest news right now is it's October. So the Parks Foundation has 2 programs that are happening. One is on Thursday, October 12th, we have a Friends and Allies Summit, which brings together right now over 80 organizations to spend the day together, focusing really on capacity and organizational health within the park system. And it's just a place to build sort of connection and partnership. So that is happening on Thursday. I invite all of you to attend. Thanks to Chris. She's part of our steering committee to help develop the summit programming. And then we also have a small grants program that is partially funded through PPNR's Community Partnership Program that is open and receiving applications. They're $2,000 grants that go out, and the applications are open through October 15th. And they're nice general operating support grants. They can also go for programming, and it's really pretty open-ended. So that's a nice way to also get a little influx of capacity. So if you know anybody, please spread the word there. The other piece that we're working on, we're just in the phase of, for the Thompson Elk statue, working through the design phase there with Portland Water Bureau. And then talking to PPNR about our future for the next playgrounds, which actually Lauren covered a little bit in her presentation. And that's about it.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to go ahead and move forward because of time to the North Portland Aquatic Center update with Robin and Craig. And is it also
Robin?
Oh, it's a whole name. Sorry. Robin and Ken, please.
Well, good evening. Thank you for having Ken and I here. Happy to present a little update on the North Portland Aquatic Center, and I'm just going to share my screen here. Everyone see the giant blue pool? I can't see everyone's face, so I'm assuming that's a yes. Absolutely.
Yep, we can see it right.
Excellent. Everyone's, thank you for your sustaining your energy and going long. So I'll try to I'll make this quick. So again, my name is Robin Johnson Craig, she, her, hers. I am the capital project manager for Portland Parks for the North Portland Aquatic Center. We are currently working on phase 2, the site selection, programming, schematic design, and land use for the North Portland Aquatic Center. We just had our site selection of the Northgate Park by Commissioner Ryan in June 2023 of this year. And we've been working on programmatic options for the lap pool and need a final direction for the proposed program. When we started this project, we had no established program for the aquatic center and no approved location. And so we're definitely making some progress. Our preliminary estimates, low confidence in 2018, estimated a cost range of $36 million to $48.5 million. With the cost escalation that we've seen in our other capital projects, we had preliminary identified a $50 to $60 million range, as we did not have a confirmed site or confirmed program at that time. With the identification of the Northgate site for the future facility and the consideration of our program options, our cost estimates have been refined. We have currently $16.7 million in SDCs allocated by Commissioner Rubio, and a $15 million grant from the state of Oregon lottery fund secured this past spring with the leadership of State Representative Travis Nelson. We will have a funding gap, and we will have a gap in funding regardless of the program options between 25 meter, 35 meter, or 50 meter. We'll share more on the funding gap specifics for each of these individual program options. The good news is that we have $31.7 million in current funds allocated to the project development, but we still have a ways to go. Potential development, some funding gap options. Commissioner Ryan and PP&R senior management team will be working with you to advance options to consider to fill the funding gap. Potential funding gap options include a voter approved ballot measure, requesting additional future general fund allocations, for example, funding from a capital set aside, a capital campaign to solicit private donations, and possible use of PP&R revenues, including system development charges and program fee revenues. For each of the program options, regardless of what program option we choose between 25, 35, or 50 meter, we're going to have an incredible fund pool. The fund pool is generally a third larger than the largest fund water pools in our park system, including Mount Scott Community Center and Southwest Community Center. As you recall, Columbia Pool didn't even have the typical fund pool features that our full service community centers provide. Our fund pool is also where a majority of our swim lessons are performed. The tank is typically kept at a warm 88 degrees. Through continuing conversation this past late summer and early fall with recreation and PRMS staff, a side-by-side pool tank layout is preferred for long-term operational efficiency and maintainability. And here's what you're seeing is a diagram layout of a side-by-side pool tank showing a 25 meter fast pool next to the fun water pool. Our program options for the fast pool or lap pool include three different scenarios: 25 meter, 35 meter, and 50 meter. Even at 25 meters, this size lap pool will be the largest lap pool in our system. The depth is typically 2 meters minimum, or approximately 7 feet in depth. And we will need to explore additional amenities to the lap pool in order to support swim lessons at this depth. Lap pools in the PP&R system are kept at a cool 80 degrees. Because of the size of these swimming pool tanks, it's impossible to make temperature changes specifically for lap swimming versus lessons. So you see there is variability in the number of lanes offered in the individual pool sizes, showing ranges from 8 to 11 for a 25 meter, 11 to 15 for a 35 meter, and 18 to 25 lanes for a 50 meter. This has to do with the possible lane widths that you can provide. At times, a 6.5 foot to 7 foot wide lane is the typical group practice and general lap swimming. 7.5 feet to 8 feet lanes is for senior level swimmers and regular swim competitions. And 8 to 9 feet wide lanes are for upper level competition. So that's why you're seeing sort of variability in the number of lap lanes. I also wanted to share a little bit about our aquatic demand and supply scenarios based on these three different program options. To demonstrate the comparison between aquatic demand and supply for lap lanes, this diagram summarizes the number of 25-yard lanes in the city of Portland based on these three North Portland Aquatic Center design scenarios shown in the orange bars compared to the various demand projections. As seen in the diagram, if the city provides a 25 meter by 25-yard pool in North Portland, this would roughly replace the former Columbia Pool without accommodating any additional demand. At the time of the study was developed, we explored 33 meter, but it's comparable to the 35 meter scenario. The recommended 33-meter pool scenario, this facility would replace the lost space in Columbia and Sylvania pools. Again, Sylvania was outside of PPNR system, but was part of the PCC greater sort of ecosystem of lap lanes. This 33-meter would not replace the previously closed Buckman pool or provide new aquatic space in the city to accommodate future demand. Under the 50-meter pool scenario, the city's aquatic facilities would support the replacement of Columbia, Buckman, Sylvania, while also accommodating a 15% growth through 2045, with the increasing demand for aquatic space. This comparison of supply and demand suggests that the future North Portland Aquatic Center can either merely replace the lost aquatic space or can provide new space to accommodate existing and future demand through the delivery of a large competition-oriented facility. Now, more about those funding gap issues. Currently, with a 25-meter pool, our preliminary estimates estimate $86.5 million in 2027 dollars, and this potentially presents a funding gap of $32.3 to $54.8 million in 2027. Preliminary estimates for a 35-meter are $73.12 million and to $101.7 in 2027 dollars. This potentially prevents a funding gap of $41.42 to $70 million in 2027. And as we get bigger, the numbers grow. We're looking at a potential funding gap of $32.3 to $54.8 million in 2027 for the 50-meter pool. We have, as I mentioned, been exploring the Northgate site and providing some due diligence. I actually presented to the Urban Forestry Commission this past month in September. So the area in green that rings the Northgate site has 150 existing beautiful mature trees. Our potential development area is a total of 64,500 square feet of potential building footprint, which is approximately 1.5 acres. And we have a similar size of 1.5 acres for the associated parking and site development for this potentially roughly 3 acres of development on the 10.9 acre site. The actual park limits of the total site go south of this diagram. And here's a little bit more about the Northgate site and the existing conditions. We have a significant BES asset called the Portsmouth Tunnel, which is a 72-inch sewer line that runs 56 feet below the surface, running diagonally from the southwest to the northeast. We have an existing rugby field, the only rugby field in our PPNR system, and a training field or / practice field. We have an existing parking lot off North Geneva Avenue, which serves 18 cars and 2 van accessible ADA spaces. Any access off of North Fessenden is limited by what you're seeing in the yellow setbacks. And additionally, with the new PBOT North Portland in Motion plan, there will be no parking on the North Fessenden allowed, as those will be bike lanes. And we have additional setbacks, which are shown in the dark blue dash line, which represents the building setback codes by BDS for the future building footprint. And then just some really diagrammatic scenarios and how this could fit on site. This diagram gives you an idea of the development footprint for the 25-meter facility, with the facility in that light blue with proposed parking in orange and potential parking for 75 to 105 cars for a 25-meter pool. The rugby field will be lost in any of the scenarios with this side-by-side tanks in the square facility format. But there is a potential for recreational field space for different sized soccer fields. We will be looking towards determining how to mitigate for the loss of the rugby field, looking at a rugby field study for North Portland. This diagram gives you an idea of the development footprint for the 35-meter pool with potential parking for 85 to 110 parking spaces. And then last, and finally, the diagram strategically outlines how we could approach a 50-meter pool on the site. The 50-meter pool could potentially support 141 to 160 cars. And what's good to note is even at the largest scale of development, we would anticipate 5 nuisance trees in yellow for removal and 1 non-nuisance tree, which is a 3.4-inch ash that's in the parking lot in red to be removed. So I wanted to show sort of the worst case scenario that we're considering for tree removal. And that is currently where we are, and we would welcome your feedback to share with the commissioner on thoughts about the program scenarios, the 25, 35, and 50. One thing I do want to add is that the original charge for the project was to fill a gap in service of North Portlanders. Providing a 50-meter pool is actually is serving a much bigger gap that we have system-wide. So we have to be careful about the impacts that creating such a regional destination to North Portland might incur. So I just wanted to share that. And then Ken, could you share just the thoughts from the Tongan community about the loss of the rugby field? Sorry to put you on the spot, but I know you know this information really well.
No worries. I'd be happy to. Thank you, Robin. Hello, everybody. I'm Ken Rumbach, Community Engagement Team, he, him pronouns. What my very first concern when Northgate Park was introduced as a candidate site for the North Portland Aquatic Center was the use of the rugby field by the Pacific Islander community, specifically in North Portland. I work very closely with the Tongan community, and was really concerned about the loss of that space, assuming that space, that rugby field, the only one in our system, would be lost. In conversations that I've had with folks that have been on our in our focus group opportunities, the Tongan community has been really candid with me, and it was a turning point in how I thought about Northgate as a candidate site. They said flat out, like, we'll find a rugby field. Our community, who largely lives in North Portland, lots of them at Roosevelt High School, our community, they said, will never be offered an aquatic facility like this again. We'll find the rugby field. So that again, that was a turning point for me in resting easy about Northgate as a site, a candidate site, and one that I've thought a lot about as I think about the folks. You know, as we build things, we know that there are going to be some wins and losses. The rugby field would be the biggest loss at that site, and based on the input from the Tongan community, I feel good about the direction we're headed. And it is now our opportunity to find an alternate site for that rugby field. But we'll be happy to answer questions about that as well.
Thank you. 2 points that I want to bring up is, one, do we have any community members that are here for public comments? Thank you. We are at 6:58. We have 2 minutes left in the meeting. Is the board willing to stay 10 minutes longer to ask questions? Do I have a motion? Do you have a motion by Casey to stay longer?
Sure.
By 10 minutes? Do you have a second by Alana?
Absolutely.
All those that are in favor for spending 10 more minutes so we can ask questions, could I see hands up? And those who have to go, hands up, who's staying and who can? Do we still have quorum?
Looks like 3
No votes
remaining.
required. No votes
But
required.
I'm just, thank you for all the corrections. I still want to know if we have a quorum or not. Do we have a quorum?
If we lose 3, that puts us at 8, I believe.
All right, so we're still at quorum, but we're moving on, and we're gonna go forward to the meeting until 7:10 as the board has voted. Thank you so much. I'm gonna open it up for questions.
Should we save the area for Sue Ann who are leaving?
Sue Ann is already up there. Anybody else that might have to leave immediately that has a question? Wonderful, Sue Ann, go ahead.
I'm going to speak fast. I don't know what the conversation or discussion is going to be arriving at later, but for me, I think if we're going to build it, let's go for the gold and let's go for the 50. And it's all about money. We'll figure out there's a way to get money, but then the level of pride to have a 50-meter pool with opportunities to have more kids interested in going for the Olympics. It is so inspiring. And it is going to be a destination. Let that be the community's pride. But urban design is going to be a bit messy, parking, traffic, and all that. But that's all just going to put it forward. And we all just need to go for something that is inspiring, worth the effort and worth the time for generations to come. And I do have to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suman.
All right.
Do we have any other questions? Have Bonnie and then Casey.
Mine is more of a comment. Well, I guess there's a question embedded in there as well. I will say, it seems to me, Robin, that, I mean, while I appreciate the discussion about having a world-class pool, a long course meter, 50 Olympic-sized pool, I will say that, you know, for a regionally significant competition pool at that level would require significant grandstands. I mean, with respect to the long course pools in the region, both Tualatin Hills and Mountain View Community College, I've been to many swim meets where there are many times this many parking vehicles. Now I recognize that it might not be on-site parking, dedicated parking, but it would have impacts on the neighborhood that I think we need to be very intentional about. And we need to think about what that means in the context of other programming for spectator programming, because it's not just about the pool itself. And I just want to make sure that that is being holistically considered. I also want to just mention too.
Honestly, Bonnie, wrap it up, Bonnie, because we have about 8 minutes left, and there's other people with questions.
Yeah, I also just want to, okay, so, but thank you. And I will say that with respect to replacing the pools that have been closed, I also want to mention the closure of the MLC pool, as well as temporary closure of Mount Scott. So we do have a significant deficiency that we need to address. Thanks.
Thank you, Bonnie. Casey.
It's really just a question and kind of a request that maybe we take up the idea of the gap, the finance gap, and the potential ways to address it in a separate meeting. I think there's a lot more than 8 minutes to talk about there, and I'd be curious to see what they're doing and how that's going to bump up against financing for other things that Parks needs to do.
So you're requesting maybe they return so we can have a more
detailed discussion about that. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a bit of money.
Thank you, Casey. Alana.
I came into this conversation worried about the community impact and also the impact of other uses in the park as we grew the size of the pool. It looked to me from the schematics that the loss of other space was not actually terribly significant, which is fantastic to see as the pool expands. Though I do think the community impact is important to take into account. And I agree, Bonnie, I was having similar thoughts about the fact that the size is fantastic in terms of lane capacity, but I don't think it quite gives us that, that draw of large scale events if there's not other infrastructure there. But it's clear from the chart that we saw that the demand for lane space is there. And if we assume it's going to grow proportional with population, that just a flat replacement of Columbia Pool is not going to be enough for the city. I am wondering if we look at a smaller pool, if there have been any conversations about where else we make up that lane capacity, or if this is really our one shot for the next 10 or 15 years at making up that lane capacity.
I can jump in. We have a level of service document that looked at full service community centers and identified, I believe, 4 future total full service community centers. And that would be 1, the WAMO facility or in central east side, 1 in outer east, 1 in northeast, outer northeast, and of course this one. So that would be the 4 full service community centers that we're looking to provide in our long range level of service document.
And the other 3 of those 4 would be new, and all 4 would have pool space associated with them, or
Yes.
Service. Yeah.
Yes, they all have full service community centers, and there's also one aquatic standalone facility, of course, that was identified for Park Lane. That is not currently part of the Park Lane development.
None of those are funded.
No, and none of those are on any sort of timeline.
I
But
was just
there are
gonna-
other locations
We
that have been
can do
identified.
this after the meeting, but if we want to do the next financial committee meeting, we could do like the operation finances and the capital financing there if you want to do that.
Yeah, we can do that at the financial sustainable.
Good idea.
I would also like to see if we could bring this conversation back at the next meeting and extend it a bit. I have a question that I want to put out here. It's like, which option provides us with the greatest potential for recovering costs? Fiscally staying sustainable and that, or potentially generating future revenue while prioritizing local residents and community use in the quickest time available. I know it's a lot, but that is kind of where we also need to think about. And some of this is going to be programming. Some of this is also thinking about streets and everything like that. So if we can bring this conversation back to us in the next month, if possible, so we can continue the conversation, is that possible?
We can absolutely bring it back. I will state though that the comments that we received today and the considerations and the questions will be relayed to the commissioner and his team, because we will be also presenting him with these sort of financial projections, and he may give us a directive before the next board meeting. So yes, I mean, this will be a topic of conversation for years to come.
Right.
But I just wanted to sort of note that that's where we are in our timing. And he was looking forward to hearing the feedback from this group. So we will package all that and provide it to him. I don't even think it's on our agenda for him this coming Monday, probably the following week. So.
Is there a potential that if board members have any questions or concerns that they can forward it to Elena and I, and we can send it to you?
Absolutely.
To give it to Commissioner Ryan, since we are at time.
Absolutely.
Should we ask board members to have that to us by next Wednesday, so we have a day or two to get it directly along?
Is that the
Likewise, I think if you have questions that you didn't ask tonight, and we could send written responses back.
All right, board. So if you have any other comments or questions that you want to submit, you have until Wednesday. Do you have a date on that?
The 17th. That's either the 17th or 18th.
If you can have it.
A week from today.
Okay, Wednesday the 18th by end of business, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you can CC Elena and I on any questions or comments that you would like for Commissioner Ryan to hear from the board, would be great.
Sending them to us.
Yes.
And we'll collect them and pass them along.
And I think the staff can answer the questions, and then we'll relay the comments directly.
And I will send out an email to remind everybody and provide that information. All right.
Thank you, Robin and Ken, for your patience. Hang it in.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. We're ending the meeting at 7:09. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You did it in under the 10 minutes.